You just push the button. Is it recording? I don't see the red button. Huh? But I should see the red. Okay, now I see it. There we go. Okay. All right. Yeah, check to make sure you can hear the sound. All right, so we're talking about media ecology. Okay, we're talking about media ecology. And Reem started us off by giving her definition of, repeat that again for those who might need it. Go ahead, Reem.
Brenda, can I? Could you? Sorry,
please. Go ahead.
Okay, it's the study of different environments.
Nice and loud, Reem, so that they can hear.
It's a study of different environments, and it's created by different communication. And I said that it's difficult because it's forget the word.
It's an interrogation or an interrogative.
Yes.
It's a process of interrogation or questioning. All right, that's what an interrogative is. It's a question. Okay. All right, and then Aisha, who's sick today but is helping out, has also added to that definition. Aisha?
Well, the broad, so the definition is that media ecology is the study of different personal, social environments created by the use of...
No, we all have the same slides. We don't want to hear it in your words.
This, like, I did not get it all. What I got is people tend to focus on the message instead of the medium and the environment they consume it in, and how he took a historical approach to realize this.
Well, that's part of what he says towards the end. The message is the medium, right? That's a phrase you need to associate with McLuhan, is that the message is the medium, right? So as you're memorizing these, if somebody gives you that phrase, you should think immediately of McLuhan. And how do you explain that further is that in the environment that we consume the media is just as relevant as the message that we're consuming and then the medium that we're engaging with, our environment.
This is the example they gave. It's a TV that's broadcasting a program, not a show on color wheels on TV.
What?
When I read this, I got it.
No, say it again loudly so we can hear you.
The translation of what he's saying is this example: a TV that broadcasts programs, not a TV that's broadcasting a killer whale program on TV.
Did you guys understand what she just said?
The medium comes first.
Did you all understand what she just said? No one understood you. That's what I'm saying. Speak nice and clear as best you can and slowly so that they can hear you.
So when you're usually watching a TV show, you come back here and you say, oh, I watched the TV show, no, I watched the show about color whales on the Discovery Channel.
About color whales.
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 Killer whales, yeah.
Killer whales. We couldn't understand what you were saying,
I'm
sweetheart.
sorry.
Killer whales. Okay.
On the Discovery Channel. But what he's saying is it needs to be phrased, not it needs to be phrased like this, but technically it's a TV that's broadcasting this program. Whatever the program is.
Okay.
I don't know, this helped me understand.
That helped her understand it better. Does it help you guys understand it better?
I did understand.
Okay. So as opposed to saying, what we normally say, we watch National Geographic or something on killer whales. Then I come back and I say, so Dad, you know what, last night I watched killer whales, right? As opposed to saying, you know what, last night I watched a program or a show on killer whales. The first one, I'm actually almost saying I'm as if I were actually watching. I was standing out by the water and could see the killer whales, right? So it takes away the element of the medium, of the television. Because that's how we speak. Last night I saw American Idol, or last night I saw Saturday Night Live. Isn't that what we say? Right. We don't say, last night on television I saw Saturday Night Live. On television I saw, right? He says, and by doing that, you discount the importance of the medium, the channel that you're getting the information from, right? So we don't say, oh, you know what, on Twitter, such and so happened. right? We just say, oh, I found out that this influencer likes this, or is going to be at Dubai Mall on Saturday at 2 o'clock. We generally don't say the medium. His point is that we should, because it helps one clarify and identify how we're getting this information. Why is it important to know how you're getting the information? This is a trick question.
What's about that?
Why is it important to know the channel that you're receiving information through? Why is that an important thing to know?
The chapter kind of says this.
That would be why I'm asking the question.
It talks about how
But I want you to think for yourself logically. Even if you hadn't read this chapter, you should be able to answer this.
credibility.
What do you mean when you say credibility? Did you guys hear her in the back? Did you hear the answer to the question? Huh?
I don't know how to say.
Okay, but these two people didn't hear it, did you?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Please say again for them so they can hear your answer.
Credibility, مصداقية.
Credibility, right? Why do you say credibility is the answer to why it's important to know the channel from which you get information?
I'll give an example I live every day. Sarah would come up to me and say, hey, did you hear about the fire in Goz? I'll say, no, I live in Barsha. I didn't see any fire. Oh, no, there was a fire. What she left out is she read it on social media through one of the Instagram accounts and it's not authentic.
Right, or that she saw it on
There was
Golf,
just smoke.
read it on
There
Golf
was just-
News.
There I would believe more. It was like, yeah.
That's why.
There's a disbelief when it comes directly from...
There's another reason. Because information that, depending on the channel that the information comes to you, will also depend how much of the story you get. So, if I tell you there's a fire and I say I got it on Twitter, how much information could I possibly know?
Snippets.
You know what she means by snippets?
Yeah, I don't know.
Little bit. Because I'm limited. 244 characters, right? So I can't get everything through Twitter. I might know about the fire, but I can't get all the details. If I read it in the newspaper, that's the place I can get the most detail. And everything, all the other mediums fall in between, right? So if I read it on the newspaper, that's why it's in depth. It keeps going and going, gives you all the background information. If I see it on television, it's only going to be between 30 seconds and a minute 30. And in a minute 30, I can see more, I can maybe feel more, but I won't still get as much as in the newspaper, right? I get less on television, even less on radio, even less than that on social media, right? So I can learn about it, but the depth of the information that I get, right, depends on the medium. That's why it's important to be able to identify where you're getting this information from. It goes to credibility, but it also goes to the level of information, the richness. Remember we talked about richness in digital storytelling? Was that digital storytelling? Where you learned about, well, you're going to learn about it in this class as well in another week or two, but how rich, how deep the information is. Is it just a surface information or does it dig deep and give you all the good information below it, right? So there's what we call really highly rich mediums, and some mediums are not. They're low in terms of the amount of information. Social media is low. Newspapers are very high. Newspapers, and what's even above newspapers?
News?
Books, right? Because it takes more research, more activity to put information into a book. But we know with books, we lose immediacy, right? We lose the instantaneous information. Because by the time the book is researched, written, printed, and published and distributed, some of that information will need to have been updated, right? So when we're talking about fast-moving information or immediacy, which is what makes it mass communication for us, newspapers provide the most in-depth information. Okay? All right, and that's exactly what McLuhan is saying, is that you have to consider the environment that you're getting this information from. Not necessarily where you're sitting, your physical environment of where you're sitting when you receive it, but he means how you're receiving it. Okay? All right. So when we use the term and we say media, because this is under the heading of the medium is the message. The definition here says that media is a generic term for all human invented technology that extends the range, speed, or channels of communication. Kind of what I just said, right? And when we think of that, how do we explain again that the medium is the message? How is it that the medium is the message?
Because the medium is a
Let me let somebody else, because these other folks aren't talking. And I need to know that they have it. And even if you only have part of it, if you think you understand even part of it, I need you to speak up.
What's the question?
What is meant by the medium is the message? We know what the media is, right?
Yeah.
Do we?
Yeah.
Okay. What is the media? So either you don't talk or you all talk at once. Let's get a middle ground. Go ahead.
Specific type of media such as book, newspaper, emails, telephone.
Right, so these are individual mediums, right? Medium. And together they're media, plural, IA in Greek, right? Okay. So when the term the medium is the message, because up to now you've learned that messages go through mediums, right? But now I'm telling you, Mr. McLuhan is telling you that actually the medium itself is the message. What does he mean?
Maybe because it's the main source?
It's the main source of that particular message, or a piece of information is even better. Yes, absolutely. So if it's radio, the fact that it's coming through radio, it's formatted a certain way. Unlike any other way. Even though radio is similar to television, it still has its differences in how it's formatted. So because of the medium that's being used to transport that information, it is in and of itself a medium. The message is the medium. Kind of esoteric, kind of out there, new age space thinking, right? Yeah. We're going to keep going. It'll get clearer. Like Ms. Obeid said, that we focus on content and overlook the medium, even though the content does not exist outside of the way it is mediated. If I have a radio show, I cannot put on a radio show without a radio. If I want to convey, let me do it that way. If I want to convey some information to you through the newspaper, there's a formula for writing in newspaper. Who remembers?
inverted pyramid.
An inverted pyramid. What does that mean? Hamda, what does that mean? Inverted pyramid. I'm sorry, you got to speak up because they're doing whatever out here. It's what? There are 4 inverted pyramids. What are they?
Tribal age,
Huh?
tribal age, plant age, environment age. I don't know.
Okay, that's not the inverted pyramid. How do you write a news story, a basic news story? What's the first thing that I start with?
Title. Thesis, statement. Who, when, why.
It's spelled two different ways. It's called a lead, right? It makes me very nervous that you are getting a degree and you don't know what a lead is, right? That's basic mass comm journalism stuff that you should know. All right, so the lead is the 5 W's. Okay, who, what, when, where, and how. And I know how starts with an H, but we call it a W anyway. Okay? That's the basic information. That's the information that you get on Twitter, are the 5 W's on any story. In a newspaper, it's part of the lead. It's what starts the story. Then after that, you have what's called the nut graph here. And that's the back story of what's happening. All right, it gives you all the information. Here it may give you just a boy jumped from the 5th floor of Jumeirah Towers after a 4-alarm fire broke out Saturday morning. Right? Do we know who the boy is? Do we know why he jumped out the window? Do we know if he's the only one who jumped out the window? Do we know if he lived or died or anything? No. That's where we're going to now get the information. You know, Ahmed Mohammed Hussein actually died at 5 p.m., was pronounced dead after he jumped 5 stories to his death. His apartment, he was at home by himself, and his apartment burned, and, you know, they give you all that information. Then you're going to have a quote. What's a quote?
Somebody said.
Somebody said, and it'll say, comma quote, said, whoever, Fatima, let's say, right? If we have this and then we just work our way down into what is called an inverted pyramid, meaning it's upside down. Most important information at the top leads us to the last part at the bottom. All right, I'll bite. Does anyone know why we use inverted pyramids in newspaper writing, newspaper journalism? Does anyone know how you lay out a newspaper?
Because usually the information at the bottom is the information you can do without, and people usually don't read the entire thing.
That's not the reason. That is a true statement, but that's not the reason.
Because some people read just the read and leave everything.
That's not the reason. Does anyone know the reason why we do it this
We
way?
need a layout, a formal layout.
Why do we need the
The
layout?
most important thing is it should be up.
Why?
To catch the attention.
So it doesn't get boring.
Because to show the people that this information is already
Those are all good answers, but they're incorrect. But they're all good, reasonable, sound, logical answers. The answer is that in newspapers, you put ads in first. So when you do the layout of the newspaper, you put all the advertisements in first, because that's what pays the bills. That's what provides the ink and the salaries and the paper and everything. So you put that in first. Then you put in the news. And if the news is too long for the space that's left over from the ads that people buy, they pay the newspaper for, then you got to cut. And you have to cut from the bottom. And so that's why the information at the bottom is less relevant. I could write this information at the top. You do it every time you read a story, a narrative. The crux of the story isn't at the beginning. Once upon a time, this happened and that happened and that, and then they lived happily ever after. At the end is the most important part, right? But in news writing, it's inverted. It's upside down. For the reason that if I try to fit it in this space, and I've got that much story, I cut from the bottom. And so I start cutting away the stuff I don't need. Got it?
Yes.
Okay? This is why newspaper provides you a longer and more in-depth space for information. In Twitter, that's all you get. You don't even get any of this stuff generally. Maybe a name. But the 5 W's, that's all there's time for. There's only space for. And so because of it, depending on which medium you're using, you're only going to get so much. If I write a quote for a newspaper, it'll be this information, comma, quote, said Fatima. Okay? If I write it in television, it's this information, comma, quote, says Fatima. Doesn't look like too much of a difference, does it? Said Fatma versus says Fatma. What big difference?
No.
Actually, there's 2 letters. And those 2 letters, in terms of actual time it takes to say those words and the space it takes up on the tape, makes a difference. That's why it's shorter, because this is TV, which is shorter than newspapers. It's even shorter. We usually redo this again for radio. Okay? But then these quotes are even shorter in radio. And we don't call them quotes in radio. Does anybody know what we call them?
No.
Actuaries. Or sound bites. Is that right, Mr. Adnan? Sounds right to me. Okay? Understanding this from 2 or 3 semesters ago, you guys were taught this. You should have understood it, kept it to memory, because now when I ask you how is the message, the medium, or the medium, the message, when I ask you that question, if you have this as a background information, it makes sense. It's easier to understand because you know there's a difference between the way newspapers are written versus the way radio is written versus the way social media is written. And that those differences are what we're talking about. That's the environment that we're talking about. How it's put together. Is this new information for you guys?
No.
It's not new information. It's just forgotten information.
Yes.
Okay. Though that makes me feel a little better, believe it or not. That at least it's forgotten. I'm glad to know. But it's important that you keep this stuff because it's all cumulative. What do I mean when I say cumulative? What does that word mean?
You're gathering.
Needed, important, yeah, but cumulative.
We're gonna use it like
Not
Builds up, right? Math is cumulative. There is no way possible for you to know how to do division if you do not understand addition and subtraction. Then you cannot do division. You know what I mean by division?
Yeah.
You cannot do it if you don't have those 2 concepts of addition and subtraction. Because that's all division is. It's a long-handed way of adding those 2 together. Okay? It's cumulative. You learn how to add first, then you learn how to take away. Then you learn how to multiply, then you learn how to divide. You never learn to divide first because you need those other tools, addition, subtraction, multiplication, in order to divide. Right? See, that's why we really do kind of know what we're talking about when we tell you to take this class, then take this class, then take that class, because they build upon each other. So that when you get to this class, theory, you're not sitting here looking at me like deer caught in headlight because you don't remember what happened last 2 years ago because you really weren't paying attention, or maybe you took some courses out of order and it doesn't make sense to you. Okay? Yeah. It just makes this process a little easier. Got it? Okay. What else can you tell me about the challenge of media ecology? So when you think of ecology, I'm sure when you first looked at this, you thought this was going to be about like truly environmental, outside trees and grass and the air, and no. We're talking about a communication environment. Okay. It's the study of different personal and social environments, and this is what you were trying to tell us, created by the use of different communication technologies. We just went through that. I love this one part here where it talks about the invisibility of environments.
Yeah.
Just because we don't see them doesn't mean that they don't exist. They do exist, but the fact that we don't see them is the issue. It says it is not technological abnormality that demands attention. So it's not things that look weird to us. It's the things that look everyday common that we should be paying attention to in terms of our communication environment. Because that's where the real meeting of the message and the medium are happening. And we get used to it and we just think it is what it is, and that people will understand us. That's why we say, I saw killer whales last night. As opposed to, last night on television, I watched killer whales. We become so used to saying the same thing over and over again and assuming that people understand. I could have really meant I watched killer whales on my laptop last night, right?
Yeah.
Which is not the same as watching it on television, even though I can technically watch TV on the web now, right?
Yeah.
But I still haven't conveyed the same information accurately in my description. All right? Do I mean the same things when I say I watched killer whales on YouTube versus I watched killer whales on National Geographic? Be careful. Is it?
Yes,
How?
that's a different media. And
How is it different? Both on television? What are you talking about?
well, this is laptop.
No. On my television, I have a smart TV. I click the right button, it goes to YouTube. I can watch whatever I want on YouTube on my big screen television. What's the difference?
Maybe it's
That's how you
edited.
do it. You search for it. The
High
other
quality.
just comes along.
Maybe it's edited. People can edit the video.
Maybe it's edited. Can I watch National Geographic on YouTube?
Yeah, there is a live show, I guess.
Yeah. It's not live. It's not live, but it's not, you're thinking of programmed, right? So I can turn to the National Geographic channel, which is 6 something on my OSN, right? And I can watch the killer whales on National Geographic, on OSN, on my television.
But that will be an hour show. And on YouTube, it's going to be, because it's a different medium, it's going to be 2 minutes only, maximum.
No, it's more than 2 minutes. I think you get 10 or 15 minutes
Oh.
max on. But I can still watch that 1 hour show, but I got to watch it in bits and pieces, right? They won't let me just watch the whole show.
I can skip.
Hmm?
On YouTube, I can skip.
You
and
can
see
skip
what-
on TV
what
now.
I want.
Also, OSN.
Yeah, on TV on OSN I can skip.
You can skip on TV.
I can skip. But what I'm saying is, because it's a different format on YouTube, I can't sit and watch an hour's show.
Yeah.
I have to only watch 15 minutes and then click down to the next one, part 2, and then part 3, and then part, right, to get the whole hour. Right? So it is still, because the medium is different, the message then becomes different and just disjunct. Okay. And then it says what I just said, the ordinariness of media make them invisible. We don't think about the media being a part of everything we do because it has now become so much a part of our culture, it's invisible.
In the background.
It's a part of the background, it's the scenery, it makes up everything. We don't see it anymore. Is that a good thing, bad thing? Is that dangerous, not dangerous? What's your opinion?
It's the both. It's a good thing, and at the same time, it's bad.
And what's my next question?
What?
Why?
Why? Somebody's been paying attention. They know what I'm going to ask. So why? You can't just answer that question. You got to tell me why.
Why? Because it's good to see the news, to know what's happening around us, and to be updated. And it's bad because we see all the time. It's bad because how we use it. Some people use it all the time, so it's will damage their eyes. It's harmful for the human.
Okay, so it could damage your eyes. Damages a lot of things. Damages
The
relationships.
culture also.
Huh?
It's changing the culture and the way, the traditions way.
It is. It's changing the culture. How is it changing the culture? How is media changing the culture?
Well, it talks about how in the tribal age we used to listen.
Your name just went right out of my head. I'm sorry, sweetie. You, right in front of me. I'm not that cross-eyed. Yes. That's good. Who? Me? No, me. Yes, you. How has the media changed the culture? The presence of media all and everywhere.
For example, the clothes,
The way they think.
the way,
How do you mean by the clothes?
for example, if I saw something in TV and I like it, even it's not from our culture, I will try it. Because
Okay.
I like something.
The trend for fashion, for example.
Dress code will change.
Okay, but I mean, just the fact that media is present in your everyday life, everywhere you go, how does that change the culture? I want you to think deeper than fashion.
About communication.
Nora.
The way they think,
What-
how
what-
they see, like maybe they make them more open-minded, and how they see
Who is they? Keep going.
the media.
The media
Make
is
the-
more open-minded?
No, make the people like
People are more
yeah,
open-minded.
and how they see other culture like different way than the old times.
Okay, it gives you different exposures, right? You get to see other people that maybe you've only heard about or read about in books, but you really didn't know anything about. But when you have television or social media, really brings in the world. It shows how small the world is, right? Okay, excellent answer. Great to hear from you. Good job.
Miss, also the way how we will talk. Sometimes we learn different word, the way how we talk, even bad or good.
Bad or good, right? We learn different language skills, different language, how to use language differently, right? Because of our exposure to different cultures and different things that we normally wouldn't. You're right. If we live in a village and this is all we know are the people in this town or village, our exposures are very limited. But when through media, it changes our culture, our outlook, our views, because we learn that there's more than just our little town or village, right? How else?
We can see other culture values.
We do. So the exposure element we have. What about if there's an accident or if there any kind of incident, accident, tragedy that happens, what's the first thing people do? Do they really?
No. Take a video. Take a video.
Yeah,
They take a video and somebody yells, "Call the police!"
yeah.
Right? But most times people, everybody, right? Everybody wants to be the person that gets the video of whatever, right?
He's hero because
He's the hero.
he's
That's
the
right.
first one taken.
Your 15 minutes of fame. I was the one who captured, right? Okay, so that is why it has changed the culture. Because this medium right here makes everybody an eye reporter. So? And so that's one of the other ways. Remember this, write it down. You can use it as an example. If I ask you about, explain to me that the medium is the message, you should be able to tell me that it's McLuhan. You should be able to tell me, explain to me what that means about the environment through which the message comes through is important as the message itself. And when I say, and give me an example, for example, it has pervaded the culture such that people now are all eye reporters just by being on the scene. All right? So the medium of the telephone, the smartphone, in and of itself has become important change factor for the culture. What you guys laughing at? What? Tell me.
Sorry.
She's texting. You're not supposed to tell me that part.
She's not. I'm taking notes.
I know. She's taking notes. She's like, I wasn't texting. And if she is, you're not supposed to tell on her. Come on. Okay.
To Brenda?
Yes.
Question. So,
Question on the floor.
so in the chapter it talks about how this made, how in the digital age, what's it called, digital age? How we consume things individually, as opposed to the tribal age where everyone sat down and listened to what's being said. Do we mention this?
We can assume things, you said?
No. We consume
Consume. Okay.
individually now, as opposed to in the tribal age, where we sat down and heard one person talking, and that was the gospel to us. Do we mention this?
I would. I mean, and this is the next part of the 4 stages. In his
So we
media
can give
analysis, as he looked over human history, this is how he got to this point. This is part of the process. Remember the construction or the theory building? This part of the lecture is helping you understand how he came to this conclusion. Because he did a historical analysis. He went back and he looked at the history of communication and said, you know what, you can really break it down into 4 different phases. We had what's the tribal age, right? And we're very familiar, and this particular culture is still very much a tribal aged culture by nature, right?
Yes.
That's the beauty of this culture, is that it's held on to that tribal age. And what do we mean by that?
The family is,
We listen.
The community,
Yeah.
right? It's still, there was always a sheikh who you went to for the problems,
Yeah.
right? If I had a problem with my neighbor, I didn't have to go talk to my neighbor. The next day I'd get up and, go at 9 or 10 o'clock and sit and talk with the sheikh. Well, this is what's happening. His fence and the trees growing over, and I just explain it. And he says, no worries, I'll take care of it. He calls my neighbor, he tells the neighbor, I don't have to worry about it, right?
Yes.
Because the communication was based on tribal or communal aspects, right? We ate together, we worshiped together, we talked together. Everything moved within this small circle. So there was communication, but the way it was handled was differently. Then we move into what's called the literate age. And what's that mean?
Reading.
Beyond reading.
Text. We get meaning from text.
We get meanings from text. So what do we mean? What do I mean when I say that? See, who haven't I called on today?
I love how everyone is averting their eyes.
I know they all are, but I've got it. No. Fatma. Yes. Literate age. What is that?
I don't know.
You don't know? Well, you know what? I can say, Fatma's always real honest with me. She says, I don't know. I love that. Thank you. Literate. What does the word literate mean?
شو بدي يتكلمون؟
hey,
When they
you go on, you go on.
When they read?
When they read, yes, when they read. So it's the textual information you get. And so people then began to read. So that's where the communication came from, writing and reading, because you can't read without writing, right? And so then we move into where people are now going to schools in order to learn to read and write. Then there's what's called the print age.
Like books.
Books, right. So this happens after Gutenberg, where we now have the ability to mass produce books. And if I said Gutenberg and you don't know who I'm talking about, I'm going to straight to the VC and tell him to take your name off the list. Right? Gutenberg?
Print age.
What about the Gutenberg print age? Who is that? Who is Gutenberg?
Who is
Somebody, please, save your classmates.
Can I?
No one, I know you're going to Google it, but you should know who Gutenberg is.
We took it an introduction to graphic design and mass communication.
Search in your notes. Pull it up out of your computer. Still nobody? Gutenberg?
No, wait.
Wait. Miss Wait.
أعطاكم الإجابة. She gave you the answer.
Huh? You guys are killing me. You're killing me. You got to take this stuff seriously. Do you know this is a question that the VC could ask you at any point, because any general professional will know that the printing press was innovated. It was created by the Chinese, but was innovated by Gutenberg, who began publication of the Bible in the Middle Ages, and that's what was the onslaught of the book industry. Basic stuff. You should never walk after this moment. When you walk out of this class, you should commit to memory who Gutenberg is, and never ever again should anybody ever ask you about Gutenberg and you not know who he is. Otherwise, don't even tell people you have a degree in applied media. Just tell them you majored in something else, right? Don't disservice yourself that way. Gutenberg, basic. Okay. So the literate age is when we have the printing press. Then we move into the print age when we have the printing press, and now we can mass produce textual information. I know you knew, Aisha, but I want to hear from other people, whether they know or not. Okay.
Actually, it was history of media design.
History of media design. You would have had it there. Intro to mass comm. It should be in that class. I mean, this is basic stuff.
I was taught by different people, so maybe that's the problem.
It could be, but that's my point, babe. That's exactly my point. You can't forget semester 1 or 2 or 3. It builds, everything builds on top of each other, right? So your advice to these younger students is to tell them not to throw away their text or their notes, and they need to keep this stuff because you're going to need it by the time you get here. So you'll know and remember what you're talking about. Okay? The electronic age. So now we've moved into the digital or electronic age. What's the beginning of the electronic age?
Telegraph.
Electronic age. What's the medium that starts the electronic age? Radio, thank you. Radio, right? And or sound recordings actually precede radio. But the electronic part of it is when we're able to broadcast it over long places, large distances. Okay? Those 4 you need to know, because what he's talking about is how did he develop this theory. Okay? And the rest of your slides go through all of those ages. So now we're in what's called the digital age. What's the difference between the electronic age and the digital age? And be careful.
When the TV started?
That was television, radio, sound recordings and radio, television. That's the electronic age.
Phones,
Hmm?
telephone, mobile.
That's part of the electronic. Digital. Mobile, making the mobile, yes. What's digital? I told you guys the other day.
What's the number?
Huh?
The number.
The numbers, yes. The zeros and ones. All that information are turned into zeros and ones and are digitally transmitted. Right? So it's you take a lot of information and you compress it into zeros and one, which allows you to compress it into a smaller space, send it over even further distances, and then when it reopens, you have the information you need. Okay? It's the digital age, and that's when we start with the internet. So we're talking about the 1950s, late 40s, early 50s, when the digital age starts. But in earnest, it's really during the 90s, 80s, and 90s that it really kicks off with the internet, the web. Then we move into social media, and this is all a part of the digital age. Okay? All right. And that's pretty much what the rest of this talks about. We're going to pick up on Wednesday with the last part of McLuhan, looking at the critique. And then we're going to go right into the next chapter, which is on semiotics of Roland Barthes. Okay? Semiotics. And semiotics, actually, you pretty much know, but you just don't know you know. It's about signs and symbols in language. All right, we're making progress. So when I come in here on Wednesday, will you all have read chapter 26? We won't have a repeat of today, will we? No more. This was the first time, first and last. Okay, all right, you guys, good job. Have a good afternoon. Remember, as I'm around, around. If you need to talk to me about your papers, you can. I called Selena over in BB Learn, and it's showing now. So make sure you can see your grades. If you didn't get it turned in, then that's why you don't have a grade, right? But everybody's grade should be there and showing. The feedback is in there. I wrote the feedback. That's a good point. You guys, listen up. Make sure you click the part with the feedback, because I wrote in there specifically what you need to do. Okay? But you can still come see me and make appointments as you progress. I have a student who's coming to see me every couple of paragraphs, and that's okay.